Hello again, and welcome to another of Mosaic's coffee breaks. Mosaic is, of course, a collaboration of the organisations shown at the front of this presentation, and that collaboration focuses very much on the ownership issues associated with mid-market law firms. And when we say ownership, we mean everything associated with ownership, mergers and acquisitions, partnership structures, succession planning, partner exits, and everything associated with all of those issues. I hope you enjoy this broadcast.
Hello everyone, and Happy New Year from all the guys at Mosaic. This is our first recording of 2023, and we thought what better way to start the year than with a look back at what we've all been doing in 2022. So without further ado, I'm going to invite my colleague Howard to kick us off with a look at what Howard Hackney LLP spent a lot of time doing last year.
Thank you, Nigel, and again, Happy New Year to all our viewers and to Mum. So Happy New Year. Yes, last year, a really interesting year last year, in spite of the coming out of the pandemic. Lots of things still going on, very active marketplace. I think the most interesting, exciting thing that I got involved with, along with Mark, who can't be with us today, was the conversion of a partnership, an LLP, to a limited company, and then sale on to an employee ownership trust, an EOT. And that's happening increasingly now, I think, in the legal profession, although I think the creative industries tend to see it more often, but I think it does apply to legal firms, and you see more and more of them. Really fascinating exercise. Technically complex, but once you've done a few, they roll off relatively easily with the SRA approval, with tax clearances, etc. I find, and Mark and I found, that the most complex area was getting the hearts and minds and deciding how the employees interrelate to the employee council, and how they relate to the trustees of the corporate trustee, and then how they relate to management and who's entitled to do what. That was the most complex and fascinating area.
It is fascinating, Howard, and I'm sure we'll come back to it in a bit more detail later in this call. And I think it's fair to say that you and Mark have established a little bit of a niche in that area, which is good to see. And I suppose we should move straight on to Mark's partner, Paul. EOT is not your thing, Paul, but what would you say Bennett Briegel were busiest doing last year?
I think really two things. I think with the increased activity of the regulator, we were obviously very busy. That's my particular area of expertise. We were seeing quite a lot of SRA inquiries of firms around financial stability, around concerns over conduct, and with in relation to SLAPs and sanctions. So we've been supporting large firms, small firms, everybody in between, in relation to that quite a lot, and also in the kind of core Mosaic space around mergers and acquisitions, talking to lots of investors, talking to private equity, and talking to firms who really want to make a plan over the next 12 or 18 months to go forward. So yes, as Howard alluded to, the deal sector's been busy, but actually we're also seeing quite a lot of interest around longer term planning. So I think rather than us just advising on the deal, which is what we were sort of doing in 2019 and 2020, once the pause after the initial first lockdown released in sort of June, July 2020, and then things sort of returned to fairly much deal normal. What we're seeing at the moment is people planning for a 2 or 3 year cycle to exit.
That's interesting. And Paul, I promise you this is an innocent, not a facetious question, but was SLAPS an acronym, or is it a minor punishment?
Yes, SLAPS, strategic. It's about the public participation in. So it's about using defamation law. It's around the ethics of what law firms doing. Is it justifiable in the public interest? So I sat on the Law Society panel that came up with their guidance in relation to that. The SRA issued guidance around it. There's quite a lot of interest from politicians, but it's all about strategic public participation in debate. So it's
Lovely.
around people like the Russian oiligarchs trying to silence journalists, supposedly.
So
SRI
very, very facetiously then, Paul, it's nothing to do with Prince Harry's revelations.
no, it's nothing to do with Prince Harry's revelations. And if Howard, you say he could do with a good slap, I couldn't possibly comment.
Thank you, Paul. Barry, what's Wilkinson Reed been up to in 2022?
To a large extent, 2022 was a continuation of what we've been doing in 2021. And I suppose there were two main things. One is the increasing importance of using data and extracting data, using it to identify underlying issues. And I think the whole issue is that we focused on more is actually, so what? You've given me some information. It's very nice to know, but what am I supposed to do about it? And therefore, both the particular areas that we've been digging, and also trying to get away from being accountants and having numbers, and being much more trying to use graphical presentation to make it obvious. So what do I do next? What result am I after? How's this information going to help me? And one of the things that we have done with some success in some places and less in others is actually what I would call democratize the information, actually, so that it gets fed down to the levels where people can actually more effectively do something, even at fee earner level. Once they understand what the information is telling them, crack on and do something, and that changes the dynamic and helps to bring the pressure coming upwards from the teams actually wanting to do things rather than seeing the information there as a stick that they're being beaten with. So that's basically, as I say, continuation, trying to refine the presentation and make it more user friendly.
If I remember rightly, Barry, you and your colleague John Humferson took us through the uses of Microsoft Power BI in one of these calls last year. Yeah, so you've just been extending that and building on it?
Indeed. Well, we've sort of changed tack, moving it away from being things that we think you should know, actually, to version 2 is very much on what the users have been saying. Actually, could you please?
Yeah.
Without embarrassing you then, Nigel, what have you been up to in this last year?
Well, my focus has been the same for a number of years now. It's in those three areas. So acting as a critical friend for law firm leaders. And I was surprised when I started as a consultant that there was so little interest in the critical friend stroke non-exec role in the mid-tier. That has changed in my view over the last couple of years, and quite possibly the pandemic's accelerated an interest in that so many of our meetings now take place virtually, and we don't have to have conversations about traveling time and proximity. So while I wouldn't say I'm overwhelmed with clients in that area, there's certainly much more interest in the critical friend or non-exec than there was a couple of years ago, which is pleasing to see. But last year was a significant one for yours truly, in that I ended very amicably my relationship with Bircher Jennings, which I'd had for the pricing arena for a number of years. So I went on my own in terms of pricing work around about February, I think, last year, and that's gone very well for me. I'm still extremely busy and in demand in that area. And the third thing that I'd probably mention links in with something Paul was saying earlier. I think the last 6 months has probably seen me deal with the most inquiries I've ever had in a similar period of time in the M&A field. And it's been very much medium to long-term planning. I think I have to agree with Paul on that. It's both buyers and sellers looking at what kind of firm do we want to be in 2 years' time, and what sort of steps do we need to take to achieve that. So that's been an interesting development. It takes up a lot of time, and as you will all know, because you all work in this field, boy, do we kiss a lot of frogs. So I think it's unusual for us as Mosaic to have Paul on the call, and it's very welcome. You're very welcome, Paul. It's in that field of regulation that we don't cover that often, that I think we could usefully spend a moment or two as we wind up this call. Howard, Barry, have you got any questions for Paul on what he's doing in the regulatory field?
One of the things I know, again, looking long term, you were talking at one time about some of the potential regulatory issues that come out of Howard's area of Mark's area of EOTs. Is that something that you can elaborate on a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing to realise with an EOT is obviously it's a complete change of structure, and it may lead to the founders of the business or the people that have run the business for a long time exiting over a period of time. There still therefore needs to be succession planning. Though you know the structure needs to bring on board the future managers. It's moving strangely to a similar challenge for a corporate. Whereas you know I'm thinking of somebody I'm aware of and have spoken to around the challenges of somebody who led that business for 25 years. They effectively retired, having done a 12-month handover, and the new person decided it wasn't for them within 6 months. They've then had to come back into the business, having had that 6 months out, to pick it up again to try and pass on. So you've still got that succession challenge with an EOT. It's a great exit strategy for those in current situ, but you mustn't lose sight of the bigger picture, that once those, I always refer to them as big beasts, once those big beasts depart, you know, is what's left? Is there leadership? Is there some strategic thinking? And yes, you can have roles and responsibilities through the EOT structure, but you need to make sure that you're thinking in terms of 3-year, 5-year, 10-year cycle. It's not a it's not a one-off succession challenge solution. What it does is it changes that long-term planning. Would you agree, Howard?
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Gentlemen, I'm very conscious of time, and I desire normally to keep these chats to around 10 to 15 minutes. So if it's okay with you guys, we'll wrap this one up for now and wish our viewers and Howard's mum all the very best. We'll see you again soon for the Mosaic crystal ball gazing. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.